We have new information tonight on the search for Jaliek Rainwalker.
Jaliek was only 12 years old when he vanished without a trace.
The disappearance that's pitted parents against police and has ripped families apart.
Jaliek Boyd was born on August 2nd, 1995 in Albany, New York. His biological mother faced substance abuse issues throughout her pregnancy with Jaliek, causing him to experience the physiological effects of withdrawal at birth. The state soon took custody and placed him into foster care, and by the age of only 12, he had lived with 6 different foster families. These families often described Jaliek as a charming, selfless boy with a speech impediment. Notably, he had striking green eyes and a confident demeanor to match. Growing up in rural Vermont, he stood out due to his appearance. There weren't a whole lot of people who looked like Jaliek. During the summers, he enjoyed taking karate classes and attending music camp, both of which really helped him manage his emotions. This emotional regulation was particularly paramount as he experienced behavioral challenges, including reactive attachment disorder, stemming from his early life experiences. This caused outbursts of anger and difficulty forming attachments with his caregivers. One foster mother in particular recounted a Halloween when Jaliek became instantly attached to another mother with children about his age, even going as far as calling her mommy. While the situation was awkward, the foster mother admitted that she was pleased that he could form bonds at all despite his unstable background. However, it wasn't always easy. Jaliek would sometimes join other families in public places and become very upset when they left, highlighting his struggle with a sense of belonging. Mary McGowan, executive director of the Association for Training on Trauma and Childhood Attachment in Children, or ATTACH, explained that children like Jaliek often feel like failures, leading to anxiety that overwhelms their ability to self-soothe. She emphasized the role of foster parents in understanding the underlying causes of such behaviors. All of the foster homes where Jaliek had been placed throughout the years were designated as therapeutic care, specialized in treating children with emotional and behavioral needs due to trauma or developmental disabilities. His next and final family was no exception. In July 2003, Jaliek was placed under the care of Jocelyn Kerr and Jocelyn McDonald from Salem, New York. The couple, who had 3 biological children and 1 other foster child, worked as weavers, but both came from white-collar backgrounds. Jocelyn came up with the new surname for Jaliek, Rainwalker, while, you guessed it, walking through the rain. Within the year, Stephen and Jocelyn adopted both Jaliek and the other foster child. Jocelyn soon found Jaliek's behavior overwhelming and delegated his care to Stephen, who kept Jaliek close, often walking behind him with a hand on his shoulder. While family members saw Jaliek as happy-go-lucky, Stephen was quick to suggest that this was only part of the story. Stephen and Jocelyn homeschooled Jaliek along with their other children, and sometimes they would go on group outings with other homeschooled families. When Jaliek was 10, at one of these outings, a fellow homeschool teacher noticed that he was outside without a winter coat. When asked, he explained that his family was living in a tent while they were building onto their house, which alarmed the teacher given the freezing temperatures. Despite reporting this to the school, no action was taken and Child Protective Services were not contacted. In October of 2007, Jaliek got in trouble once again at another one of these outings for making an explicit comment to another student who had supposedly gotten on his nerves. Jocelyn then forbade him from living in the house, citing the safety of the other children. Legally responsible, Stephen moved with Jaliek to his parents' home, and shortly after, he began the paperwork to undo Jaliek's adoption, seeking to return him to the foster care system. At one point, Stephen wished to travel overseas to visit his father, but Jocelyn refused to stay alone with Jaliek. Because of this, he was placed in respite or temporary care with Tom and Elaine Person, experienced foster parents who, over the course of 36 years, had welcomed more than 70 children into their home and adopted 7. Jaliek reportedly really enjoyed his week with the Persons, participating in activities with their other kids like making chocolate pudding and visiting a haunted house. However, the Persons were only able to watch over Jaliek until the 1st of November because they were flying to watch watch their daughter run the New York City Marathon. They would continue caring for Jaliek once they returned that next Tuesday, but in the meantime, planned for him to stay with Stephen. So on the evening of November 1st, the Persons planned to meet up with Stephen at a Best Western in Albany. When they arrived at the designated time of 7 p.m., Stephen's unlocked Town & Country van was in the parking lot, but he was nowhere to be seen. Elaine instructed Jaliek to go ahead and put his duffel bag in Stephen's van since it was already unlocked and he would probably return from wherever he'd wandered off to. When Stephen finally did make it to the parking lot, he was extremely annoyed that they had opened his car door and he really didn't say much else during the exchange. With that, Stephen hopped in his van and took Jaliek to Red Robin for dinner. According to Stephen, they drove over to his parents' house on Hill Street in Greenwich where they would stay the night. During the drive, Stephen took a call from a friend where he spoke very negatively about Jaliek, criticizing his behaviors and predicting a troubled future for the young boy. The friend had assumed that because of the harsh words being thrown around calmly but coldly, that Stephen was alone. But no. He was saying all of this right in front of Jaliek while he was sitting in the car. When they arrived at his parents' home, Stephen claimed that Jaliek went to bed as usual while he stayed up and watched a movie and then made his own way to bed as well. The next morning, Stephen found a note from Jaliek stating, "Dear everybody, I am sorry for everything. I won't be a bother anymore. Goodbye. Jaliek." Stephen reported Jaliek missing on November 2nd, 2007. Initially, the police thought that he was just a troubled kid that had gotten into an argument with his parents and ran away from home for a little while, so they didn't act right away. Jocelyn called her mother Barbara, stating that Jaliek had run away. Barbara wasted no time heading off to Hill Street, where she met with her daughter and son-in-law. Stephen was pacing around nervously and recounting the events of the previous day, including his frustration with the service at Red Robin. When getting to the strange hotel drop-off point of his recollection, Stephen got very angry about Elaine opening his car to put Jaliek's bag inside. He even went on to suggest that Jaliek had gotten in with some black teens and joined a gang while under Elaine's care, and that was the explanation to his disappearance. Later on during questioning by the police, he even suggested that Jaliek may have been kidnapped by a cult or sold into human trafficking. Barbara was puzzled by Stephen's behavior and the lack of urgency in searching for his son. Sure, they'd called the police, but why hadn't they been actively working with them or even out looking for Jaliek themselves? When Barb suggested going door to door and asking neighbors if they'd seen anything, Stephen said that he had to leave and would be busy attending his boss's birthday party. After 24 hours and no updates on Jaliek's whereabouts, local police began to take the case seriously and contacted the State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation for assistance. Authorities retraced Jaliek's and Stephen's steps, starting with the Red Robin restaurant, where a waitress recalled Jaliek huddled in the booth, visibly uncomfortable. The waitress was new and didn't know much about the job yet, but she did sense something off about this site. Stephen ordered for Jaliek, and when his food arrived, he barely touched the plate. The waitress began to wonder if this was some sort of kidnapping situation, not because they didn't look alike, but because the discomfort was palpable. On top of that, she had made a mistake when bringing the order to the table, and Stephen went full Karen on her to the point where the manager had to step in and appease him with free food. Back at the house in Greenwich, authorities confirmed that the note left behind was, in fact, Jaliek's handwriting. But Elaine Person said that she believes the note he had left behind had been written at her house in the days prior and was meant as an apology to his schoolmates for acting out rather than a runaway letter. And this was actually quite common because he did often write apology letters following his less than favorable behavior. By the 4th, a search party was formed by authorities and forest rangers to do a sweep, and the family members were interviewed. The public was scared. This was a small community where everyone knew everyone, and if you forgot to lock your doors, no big deal. But now, the place they'd felt comfortable raising their families was seemingly no longer safe. In the following weeks, local and state police, as well as the FBI, joined in on the search. They'd searched dumpsters, emptied ponds, and even sent professional divers to search the Hudson River. A forensic anthropologist was brought in to examine any possible evidence found in the woods, from the coal of fire pits to old tarps to the entrails left behind by hunters. It has been described as one of the most massive, extensive searches conducted for a missing person. Despite this, Jaliek's duffel bag was never found, and his favorite stuffed animal was discovered to be in the garage, which he almost certainly wouldn't have just left without. Authorities began to question if Jaliek really made it to his grandparents' house in Greenwich at all. Stephen was acting very erratically, and his demeanor seemed off, so everyone was even more suspicious that he had something to do with Jaliek's disappearance. Police looked into his employment at the State Department and the possibility that he had used his connections nefariously, but no evidence. He wasn't helping the search, claiming that he didn't trust the police since they hadn't taken the disappearance seriously in the first place. He actually did the opposite, ripping down missing posters around town and denying talking to reporters during Jaliek's vigil because he had to go sell eggs. While most people were really put off, one sympathetic reporter approached Stephen gently and was able to interview him at his home. During this interview, he said something along the lines of, "There are so many children dying in Iraq right now. Why are we spending all this time and energy on one kid?" 10 days into the search, Jocelyn told Barb that she should just stop talking to law enforcement and go back to making pottery at home. When she didn't, Jocelyn told her mom to never contact her or her family again. Stephen claimed he understood why he would be a suspect, but denied ever harming his foster son. He expressed his displeasure with the police harassing him without evidence, and by the 14th, the parents completely stopped cooperating with the police. Stephen refused to take a polygraph, stating police wanted to blame him and were already trying to coerce him into confessions in their interviews.
And you know what? If you can't rely on people you call your heroes when the time is tough, who do you rely on? News media? Jerry Springer?
If I were in Stephen's shoes, I would comply so that the police could just clear me as fast as possible and then turn their efforts toward, finding my son. But that's just me. Police continued checking out hundreds of possible leads, but it was difficult because there hadn't been any other crime in the area to relate the case to. 3 months after Jaliek's disappearance, Stephen was named a person of interest, not meaning that he specifically did anything, but that he may have information on the disappearance that he wasn't sharing. Stephen's phone had pinged near South Troy, leading investigators to search his van. Neither his phone nor the vehicle led to any conclusive evidence. But then, police released a blurry CCTV footage from a bank that captured a town and country van resembling Stephen's around midnight on the night that Jaliek went missing. According to Stephen's story, they would have already been at home in bed by then, but footage could not ID the exact vehicle as Stephen's. A witness stated that she'd seen a gold van stopped along a field on Route 40 that night, and the following night, a large vehicle pulled into the field and then left quickly. That field was searched using sniffer dogs, but no dice. On February 1st of 2008, media outlets received an anonymous note. Jaliek still alive. Needed a foot soldier for this war on drugs. Picked him up on Route 40, post 30. He's okay. No fake. He says his mama and papa. Who are the Macaroni family? My cat named Diamond? Why does Franti yell fire? Don't try to look. We are not there. Subsequently, police searched the Kerr family's home, seizing a computer and printer, but found nothing conclusive. It wasn't long before the family moved out of state to West Rupert, Vermont. This is extremely strange considering the families of missing persons typically want to stay put in case their loved one does happen to find a way home one day. Stephen and Jocelyn threatened to sue the police for improper conduct on their search warrant. July 2008, after the family had moved away, Jocelyn's mom did a little bit of digging. She went to take a look around her daughter's abandoned studio and found a yellow fleece very similar to the one that Stephen claimed he last saw Jaliek wearing. Sadly, it was never confirmed to be the one that Jaliek was wearing, and Barb was charged with burglary and eventually convicted for trespassing. Jaliek's case was reclassified as presumed homicide in 2012, but there is still no evidence to prove whether he is dead or alive. With the odds being against Jaliek's favor, Stephen and Jocelyn maintained that he was still alive and would one day return home, wondering what all the fuss was about. Since that fateful day in which Jaliek was last seen, his grandmother Barbara has not only had to mourn the loss of him, but her daughter as well, her son-in-law, and her remaining 4 grandchildren. In 2013, Grandma Barbara and Elaine Person appeared on TV to spread awareness about Jaliek's disappearance. In 2017, skull fragments were discovered in a marsh off of the Hudson River, but after examination proved to be unrelated to Jaliek's case. In June of 2022, police told Barbara that they had received a credible tip to search a 40-acre wooded area near baseball fields in South Troy. Storm drains were searched by underwater recovery teams, but there was never any word about what the tip was or if anything was actually discovered. No charges have been filed to this day, and Jaliek is still missing. He would be 27 years old today, and there are still so many people dedicated to spreading the word and trying to solve his disappearance. One of the most popular groups supporting this cause is Justice for Jaliek Rainwalker on Facebook, with 6.3 thousand members active nearly daily. Local members set up information booths at fairs and festivals to continue spreading the word.
Finding him would give some resolution that, at least we know where he is or was, and maybe we could find out what happened to him, and then we could put him to rest.
I know that you're very passionate about Martin Luther King.
No, I'm very passionate about my son.